Hey there, amazing podcast listeners. We just wanted to take a quick moment to thank you for being part of our podcast family. Ay, sí, mi gente. Your support means the world to us.
Absolutely. If you enjoy our content, please consider downloading our episodes on your favorite podcast platform. It not only helps us grow, but ensures you never miss a moment of our show.
And for an extra dose of support, we'd love for you to subscribe to our YouTube page. It's the perfect way to stay connected and catch some behind-the-scenes content too.
Ya lo sabes. Download, subscribe, and join us on YouTube. It's that easy. Thanks again for being awesome. And now, let's get back to our show. Happy listening.
Hello, everyone, and welcome again to No Todo Se Cura con Vicks. We are your hosts, Maggie,
Jessie,
Heidi,
and today we have a very, very special guest.
A graduate of Columbia University and Duke University, Dr. Jennifer O, received her doctorate in acupuncture and Chinese medicine from the renowned Pacific College of Health and Science. Dr. O is nationally board certified through NCCAOM and is licensed to practice in New York. With over a decade of clinical experience, she is an experienced researcher and collaborative author of several published cancer research studies, having worked at Duke University Medical Center and National Institute for Environmental Health Sciences, which is the National Institute of Health. Her extensive postgraduate training includes specializations in allergies, fertility, pain, breast health, mental health, weight loss, metabolic syndrome, and associated conditions such as hypertension, obesity, Eastern nutrition, and diabetes. Dr. O is a certified instructor of Dragon's Way Qigong, a wellness program created and taught by her spiritual teacher, Dr. Nan Lu. Dr. O is certified to perform Qigong meridian therapy as well as demonstrate the Wu Ming Qigong Breast Health Program. She is also a dedicated and accomplished martial artist, black belt and gold medalist in Taekwondo, Wu Ming tells Qigong.
interesting conversation starter when you feel like your blind date is not going well. So,
oh yeah, that's right.
And yeah, they're like, okay, maybe we won't follow you home at night.
I know, right? I love it.
Yeah, I didn't know that about you.
Yeah, I trained a lot when I was in my teens and early 20s, and I competed and won some gold medals, and you kicked some ass. Yeah.
I love
it. It was a good outlet for a lot of my rage from my trauma, my undealt with trauma at the time. So
it went to a good place.
Yeah. But I mean, that's actually a really good segue to kind of like just talk about how I got even interested in this to begin with. A lot of people look at me and like, oh, you're Asian. Well, so of course you're interested in Asian medicine and East Asian nutrition and stuff like that. But actually, I grew up in North Carolina where there were very few like Asian people, you know, like maybe there was like 3 Korean families at my high school when I was there. So, and my parents were very Americanized or Westernized because they came here when they were teenagers. And you know, teenagers, they just want to fit in. So they really embraced, it's really interesting. They really embraced a lot of kind of very Western values and wanted their kids to grow up very Western, while at the same time, a lot of their old psychological habits were very much, you know, kind of Asian, you know, Korean culture oriented. So it was a really interesting kind of way to be brought up. Yeah. So most of my life, I didn't have a lot of Asian friends. The most exposure I had to Asian culture was visiting my family in Maryland or going to the Asian market in, 30 minutes away in another town.
Wow.
So when I was 15, my mom got it into her head that, we needed to start being more physically strong and get out of the house a little bit more. So she signed me up for Taekwondo lessons, which is Korean karate.
Yeah.
And that was my first taste of Eastern philosophy and what energy or chi is all about. That was just so mind-blowing and life-changing to me. all of a sudden I was exposed to this kind of way of thinking and way of being that really resonated with me. Not just because I'm Asian, but just for me personally. It just seemed much more, well suited to how I thought and how I wanted to be in the world. Yeah. So it really became very important to me. That was how my fascination with like Eastern philosophy and Eastern, practices really began with, being very dedicated to the art and, martial arts.
I love
So I can not only kick ass, but
you can also heal.
Exactly. Yeah. Or kick ass with healing, right?
I think it also connected to your culture.
Yeah. It was a really great way for me to connect to my culture that was not negative, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I would visit my family in Maryland and I feel very isolated because actually I didn't grow up learning how to speak Korean. So everyone's chattering in Korean or all around me and I feel like an alien there, basically. So I can really relate to how, immigrants feel when they come here and they don't have a good grasp of the language, because whenever I was around my family, I felt I couldn't communicate. I felt very isolated. But the martial arts, I was like, oh, wow, Asian stuff is kind of actually cool. Well, it's an honor and a pleasure to be here today with you ladies. I have great admiration and love for all of you.
We do too. We're so excited about this recording.
Yeah, I was so honored to be asked.
I love it.
Yes.
So getting into all of the multifaceted of a genius that you are, you are literally a jack of all trades. You are so amazing as a person. All of my encounters with you, whether it was via, internet or face to face, has always been so beautiful. So thank you for your energy. I thank Jessie for introducing me to you. It's always been so great, and you helped me a lot. So asking you to be on this podcast was so amazing. You saying yes even feels better.
Well, I remember many a good conversation with you and with the other you other ladies.
We all have Jennifer's stories.
Yes. And I mean, it was just you guys are like my dream patients, right? Not just because you listen to what kind of advice I have to give, but you really understand where my approach and where I'm coming from. It's not just sticking needles in people or, giving them some herbs to, take every day. It's about really understanding that, health is a way of life. And health is also about, are you fulfilling your happiness? Are you really aligned with what you're meant to do in this lifetime, in this, in this time and place? So I just love that all of you resonated with that. And that makes my job easy. And it makes it, it's always fun for me to be with patients, but it makes it extra fun when you guys are really vibing on it and, getting enthusiastic and feel, just right before my eyes, I can feel that you really feel like the discussions that we have are provocative in a good way, really kind of, and go out there to apply it too. So
yeah,
yes,
and a lot of the time is that we want to help those around us, because what you do is you illuminate a light to help, right? And I can do that for others, and it's like a domino effect. And that's what we're supposed to be doing. When we know how to heal, when we know how to deliver messages, that's our dream. Yes, go ahead, take this and take it out there and share it, right? So the reason I went to see you was for acupuncture. And I really want to dig deep into this because what is acupuncture? To people, they don't understand what it is. They just think it's, like you said, needles. So what is the process? Yeah.
Yeah. So, on the surface, it's inserting needles into certain pathways that are called meridians in your body. And these are like invisible energy pathways, almost kind of like electricity lines that connect to various locations on your body, various body parts, your nervous system, your blood vessels, and your organs. And you could say that they're kind of almost a sort of, energy pathways or meridians are what help communicate information between parts of your body, your organs, and the outside world versus your inside world, right? Your body. So that's what meridians are for. right? To really communicate and convey information and transfer energy and move energy as needed to where it's supposed to go. So back in the day, thousands and thousands of years ago, when the ancient Chinese sages had nothing else to do but sit on their asses and meditate, they really developed. Well, they're curious about their bodies and they're curious about what would make them healthier and what's going on. Just as people are, and they discovered through developing their psychic insight, they were actually able to see these sort of ley lines or electricity lines running up and down the body. And we're able to see almost kind of like a light up kind of map in some ways with their inner sight, like what those meridians and what those energy pathways actually did. And so along each energy pathway are what are called acupuncture points, right? Little, I like to call them subway stations or maybe radio stations, where when you put a little needle in there or you even put a little acupressure massage on it, on that area, it actually stimulates that meridian to convey certain information to an organ or to a body part to do something, whether it's to activate your nervous system and to relieve pain, or to activate your immune system and release white blood cells, or if there's an injury nearby, to alert your body to send to that area wound healing, biochemicals. So you could kind of say that those meridians are sort of they're kind of the I wouldn't say even like predecessors to like nervous system and biochemical and endocrine system activity. It's because back in the day, they didn't have MRIs. They didn't have blood tests. They had no idea what DNA was. Qi, or energy, was the way that they described all these processes happening. So actually, it's really not just invisible stuff. What they called the meridians, or what they called Qi, was to describe the activity also going on in your nervous and endocrine systems and hormones and blood vessels, right? Qi wasn't just some energy, invisible something. It actually also encompassed what was invisible to them. But to us now, because we have all these like amazing machines and diagnostic tests, is visible to us now. So what a lot of people don't understand or are not aware of is that Qi is actually not just some fairy tale weirdo thing out there. It actually, the concept of Qi does include stimulating your DNA to, create proteins to help you fix something, or create a hormone that you need, right? It's actually a way to describe how nerves work and how the nerve system is like kind of relaying messages to your brain or your spine to, relieve pain. So Qi really also encompasses a lot of physical or physiological processes that we measure in other ways in Western medicine today. Yeah. So, and then when you activate these points, again, through study and observation and trial and error, they figured out which each of these acupuncture points along each meridian actually can really do specifically. So, for example, there's a very famous point or a set of points for inflammation that are near your toes. You ladies are very well acquainted with those. Yes. Very, they're pretty, strong points. They kind of, definitely, pack a oomph. And those are for inflammation. Those are specifically for if there's heat or inflammation in certain organs or areas of your body. So, so that's just one example of like what a specific acupuncture point can do. That's pretty cool. If you know that, hey, if you have inflammation or heat in your liver, which a lot of people do, you can stick a couple needles in there and cool out that organ.
Yeah.
It's so fascinating.
That's
it's like
amazing.
Yeah. It's like you were saying, and we were talking about this before recording. It's a lot of people don't know what acupuncture is, and a lot of times they believe that it's just like, a spiritual energy thing, which it is, but there's just so much research that there is so much more to it as you're describing it, right? That when it comes to healing and when it comes to protecting and taking care of our organs. Yeah.
Yeah, there's, 13 years ago when I graduated from school, when I was in school, when did I start school? I started school in 2008 studying acupuncture. And there was some research out there about acupuncture and acupressure and herbs, but not a ton. And so 15 to 16 years later, there's so much more very, credible research done by huge institutions like Harvard, Stanford, Johns Hopkins, all the big medical centers, because they want to know what's going on. Because, it's one thing to not do acupuncture and believe it doesn't work. But when you actually get patients and when you're a medical doctor, for example, or, a physician assistant, and you see a lot of people coming in saying, hey, this stuff does work. And you get really curious about how it works. And if you can reproduce it under, more kind of stringent conditions. So now, because everyone was so intrigued by the fact that actually, so many people were reporting how, well, it worked for so many conditions. Now there's a huge body of research out there done by extremely, mainstream and well-known institutions about how acupuncture works. So, so it's really cool. So now, a lot of insurance companies, for example, pay for acupuncture because there's actual scientific research that is accepted by the National Institute of Health as being legit, credible research that shows that it's so good for pain, for example.
Yes. So many things.
Yeah, which is really exciting. Yep.
Wow.
And then on the psychology part of things, because to me, that's actually the more fascinating kind of facet of Chinese medicine. There's a lot of psychological research also being done on how it's really, really good for so many mental health issues, which post-pandemic, or I don't know, are we still in the pandemic? Kind of. Post-official pandemic. I mean, as you guys know, because you guys deal with mental health all the time, it's a pretty dire situation out there. Right? Yeah. People really, really need resources other than just medications or the occasional visit to a psychiatrist to, manage what was extremely a once in a lifetime high level, mental health stress.
Yes.
And,
I, outside of the podcast, I'm a therapist, and many of my clients that struggle with anxiety and PTSD, you get to see, because it helps so much with those symptoms of PTSD and anxiety. Even for myself, like I struggle with anxiety, and acupuncture has
we all do. Me too.
Yeah.
So from anxiety, I'm sure getting these treatments with acupuncture and targeting these different parts of your body, like you said, and turning on and hitting the station on the meridian to kind of spark. It's so important, and people don't know the science of it. They don't know that this is like a fascinating thing to do.
I love that you say it's a science. Yeah. Because it is a science. It's just a science that people are not don't grow up kind of learning about. We don't learn it in biology class, right? Exactly. We don't learn it in our chemistry classes, but it is a science in its own right that's been around for many thousands of years. It's been tested by time. I have a joke that Asian people, and I can say this because I'm Asian, that Asian people are cheap. And because we're cheap, we would never spend our money for that long on something that didn't work. So I'm like, if you really think it doesn't work, you're insulting my whole culture of people for their intelligence and their thriftiness. Because
I hear you. And it really does work. It's amazing. And who do you think, just so people are more aware, can benefit from acupuncture?
I mean, I think everyone can benefit from acupuncture. Kids and babies, even. If they have issues, whether they're genetic issues that they had since they were really young, or, if they have like, any kind of, neurodivergent conditions, such as autism or any kind of quote unquote, I don't know if they call them learning disabilities anymore. I'm not up to date on the PC terms, so forgive me. Even really young folks can benefit from acupuncture. And kids and babies are actually a really interesting case. And this probably speaks to all of you as parents and, also, having clients who are kids. They have very strong energy and very strong qi. And also they're more quote unquote pure. They haven't been as influenced, or they're not as interested in like what culture expects of you. They haven't been, hopefully exposed to all the stuff out there that, that our interesting American culture throws at us. and kind of almost, in a way programs us to believe. So they kind of are closer to who they really are and what their true purpose is in this lifetime. So a lot of issues or quote unquote problems that children or even babies have are because they are so steadfastly, really true to who they are. But their parents have different kind of expectations of them, right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So there's often a kind of clash between what that baby in their heart or that kid and their spirit really want and what the parents expect of them. So that's actually where a lot of quote unquote like mental health conditions arise. Now, there's no acupuncture that's just going to turn a kid into a zombie to follow exactly what the parent wants it to do, which is a lot, a fair amount of parents, they'll drag their kids in and kind of expect that, right? And I'm like, no, this actually might make it worse because, acupuncture actually helps you connect more to spirit. Acupuncture actually helps you connect more to who you really are, your intuition. It makes you truer to yourself because it makes you closer to your true nature. It really helps you connect to all those parts of you that are not, related to your mind. Oh, as well as your mind too. So, so babies and kids they're kind of an interesting kind of group of clients. My teacher, Dr. Lu, likes to say, my Taoist teacher, Dr. Lu, he likes to say that a lot of kids or babies who come in with issues, actually a lot of those are just a kind of reflection or absorption of their parents' energy, right? So if there's a lot of stress in that household, if there's a lot of like conflict going on in the relationship between the mom and the dad, if there's a lot of expectations being set by the parents that are not being met, that are really, just not what that kid is about, then a lot of the health issues or mental health issues often stem from that. So sometimes it's a little disheartening or, I try not to go that direction, it's a little negative, but it's kind of interesting, to see that sort of dynamic playing out between parent and child and trying to treat that, right? So how do you really treat that? Again, I am not about like trying to make the kid listen to the parents. But what I do say, and usually this is with the, child hearing this, there's a Taoist concept that children choose their parents, right? Yeah. We believe in my spiritual practice in Taoism that you choose the parents and the culture and the time and place that you are born to because it provides the environment and training and also kind of growth, karmic growth opportunities for you to best reach your full potential in whatever it is that you're meant to do in this world, right? So I'll be like, dude, you chose your parents. You got to figure this one out.
That was your choice.
And, again, kids, surprisingly, they know bullshit when they hear it, right? And they know the truth. They really know the truth when they hear it too. So actually they kind of open their eyes up wide and they're like, whoa, that's an interesting concept. And if they're not, mature enough to really understand it, or, they're teenagers and they're all about nothing to do with their parents, that's okay too. That has its own purpose. But it's definitely, it can be a little tricky treating children and kids because you always have to factor the parents into it. Yeah. So moving on to other people, I see a lot of people in their 20s, their 30s, their 40s. High anxiety, high stress. Everyone's really worried about who, what they're meant to do, hating their job, and wanting to be, figure out who they really want to be, right? I mean, that describes a very fair number of the people that I get in my office. And, and some people, they just want to feel better. They just want to be able to sleep at night and not feel like they're up to here with, anxiety and stress. And they just want to be able to get through the next few days feeling calmer, feeling more peaceful, and getting more sleep in their under their belt, right? Yeah. And then some of them, like you guys, you're really interested in digging deeper, right? And understanding that any kind of mental health issue, it really does stem from trauma, psychological patterns, and old beliefs that we just don't jive with anymore, right? That maybe we were taught as kids or by our culture, but now we are starting to really realize that that's not us. That was just something we were taught. So that actually is a big kind of like very exciting part of my work with folks. It's not just about, again, tending to their physical health, which is important because mind, body, spirit, everything is interconnected. Everything really influences each other. but also encouraging people to see that their bodies are just a reflection of their mental health. Their bodies are just a reflection of what their spirit and their heart is trying to so hard to tell them, which is, hey, maybe you're living your life in a way that is not really you. It's not really what you want to do. And you need to wake up and pay attention before something more serious kind of happens to your body, as a way to kind of really scare you. So I love treating people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s because you guys are still all very healthy and have really strong energy and are more flexible. Not to Debbie Downer on folks in their 60s and 70s, but, just psychologically and, as a therapist, psychologically, sometimes cognitively, it is harder especially because years and years have gone by, it is harder in terms of psychology to change set patterns and set beliefs. It's not impossible.
Breaking those habits,
exactly.
breaking those cycles.
Yeah. A habit that you practice for 30, 40 years is much harder to break than a habit that you practice for 10, 20 years. Right?
Yeah.
So I would say that that's kind of the main population I treat now, probably because they're closer to my age, they're closer to my sister's age. I really resonate with them. I'm kind of more like silly and kind of like, humorous than, I guess, most acupuncturists out there. Cause, I talk to my sisters and they're like 10, 15 years younger. And, I just know how to resonate with them, in a way that doesn't make me feel like I'm really old and stiff. So I think they also just appreciate talking to somebody who's been there, done that, right? I've been there, done that. I had anxiety, depression, stress up the wazoo in my 20s, early 30s.
Oh, yeah.
And it's good for young people to hear from someone who's a little bit older and has been there that it's possible to, make your way out of it, change your career, change your life completely, even change your personality completely. I'm not the same person I was 13, 15 years ago when before I started studying all of this, which is, to me, a miracle and really amazing. So, to me, that's why I'm so passionate about, and I feel it's so important to reach out to younger people, people of all generations, and let them know it is possible. It is possible to make really big changes. So.
And you make it easy too. It's just your, aura, just your demeanor, your approach, for people to feel comfortable enough to speak to you, young, old, the wise, the little ones, because of the way you are. So it's really awesome.
Yeah. I guess it's harder in compassion. A lot of Eastern practices are about develop compassion. And you're like, why? Well, sure, compassion is a great thing, right? But compassion, true compassion, is about being able to really see someone for who they are, accept everything about them, and not have no judgment, right?
Yeah.
And when people feel that from you, that you're sitting there and you have anxiety, you're on 3 antidepressants, you hate your husband, you wish you were like 30 pounds lighter, and you're sitting here and you're feeling like, hey, babe, I got you because I've been there, done that, and I know what you're going through. People feel comfortable. They feel more relaxed.
They
feel more able. Yes, they feel seen. And when you feel seen, it's so much easier to kind of take in and process and even get started on whatever it is that you want to do or need to do in order to move forward. So thank you for that huge compliment. That is actually it's actually a really big kind of concern or I guess goal for any Chinese medicine doctor who's serious. Yeah, they really do want to do that inner cultivation and self-work. Therapists are like this too, so that they develop that kind of compassion and peacefulness inside that, whatever you have, I'm not going to look at you and judge you and say that you're wrong or bad or sick or whatever. I'm just going to be like, you are where you are. And that's always a good start. So, absolutely. So that's really important.
Yeah,
I think it's more important than knowing what, all the fancy combinations of points you can do for X, Y, and Z condition, or knowing all the fancy herbs that you could be prescribing somebody, for, whatever, issues they have. Just having that aura and having that sort of, positive, positivity, I think helps really change the other person's energy, right?
Yeah.
Yes. I always say that people respond strongly to your energy, whether they know it or not. Right?
Yeah.
And if you're coming in there with good energy and love, and you're also kind of bringing in unconditional love from like your spirit, from the universe, from whatever you believe is out there, God, whatever you want to call it, then people feel it and they feel inspired.
Yes.
And they're like, oh shit, I'm feeling what maybe, is, really truly means something, really truly is true out there. Right. And they want part of it. They want part of it. They want to be in on it. And a lot of people are searching for it.
Yeah, we were talking about that a few weeks ago, ladies. Like, and we were wondering, you probably had this experience, because I think everybody has had this experience where someone walks into the room and they're not saying anything, but their energy is so heavy, and they're not even saying anything, but you feel it. Like it shifts even the energy of the room. And Jennifer, we were trying to figure out, do people that carry that kind of energy, are they aware of it? Are they aware that they're carrying that kind of energy?
A lot of times they're not. A lot of times they're not aware that how heavy their energy is, because they're so in it, right? That's their life, right? They're so used to it. It's like what my Taoist teacher says, when the unnatural becomes natural.
Yeah.
You were not really naturally heavy human beings. You were kind of meant to be happy and light and and have a joyful existence. But once you had that heavy habit for like 10, 20, 30 years, you get so used to it that you're not aware. And then of course, if you don't study this kind of thing, like energy or auras or whatever, that's not even your language. It's not even in your radar, in terms of like something that people experience. But that's a really interesting kind of thing to contemplate. I had a friend over the other day who, she lost her husband, I would say 8 years ago. 8 years ago, he died of cancer. She had her finances were just a complete mess after he died. He was a doctor and he had a huge practice, but there was just so much going on. She just lost control of all of it very quickly. And she finally had reached the point after 8 years of being able to move on. She was living in the same house that they had lived in and been married in and he died in. And she couldn't let go of it, even though it was like foreclosed, right? She actually wasn't even in legal possession of the house anymore, but she stayed because, people were very nice and they let her stay. And she walked in the room and it was like my lungs were taken away. I almost couldn't breathe. And I was like, wow, this is a very strong reaction to how heavy her energy still is. So, as you guys probably remember from our talks together, each organ has an emotional function or several emotional functions and psychological functions, cognitive functions, as well as physical functions. So the lung and also its partner, the large intestine, process and also help generate the emotions of grief, sadness, and letting things go, loss. So it's so interesting that her energy specifically was very heavy in that area, where I was like, oh my God, I can't even breathe around this poor thing. And I love her. She's a sweet lady. I was just so happy to see her because it had been a while. I hadn't seen her before the pandemic happened. But the whole conversation during dinner, it was so weird. It was just like I couldn't take a deep breath. So yeah, that's a really interesting kind of thing for therapists or doctors to contemplate. Because what if you are sensitive to that kind of energy? What do you do about it? Do you take it home with you? Do you have to feel everyone's migraines or back pains or, issues when they walk in? So I think particularly in that day, maybe I was tired that day and, I hadn't done my Qigong and my meditation practices. So and also she's my friend. So my normal kind of boundaries, my healthy boundaries weren't really kind of like up in place. So I think just unwittingly, because I'm very sensitive, I just, I really, really kind of crashed into her energy and really absorbed it because I hadn't prepared myself in the way that I usually prepare myself when I am dealing with clients and patients, because I expect them to come in with some heavy energy. So preparation, and this goes for everyone too, especially if you're sensitive. Preparing yourself and giving yourself that gift of boundaries, healthy boundaries, is so important when you're dealing with anybody in your life, whether it's your family, your clients, whoever, so that you don't take on their stuff. Because a lot of us sensitive folks, we're energetic sponges. We really feel and also take on a lot of people's stuff. And that's why people feel so good around us. Because we're actually, as my teacher says, he says, you're actually collecting their garbage.
I know.
He's like, they feel great, but you don't feel so great if you don't know what to do with it. Right.
And that awareness is so important. Some people are not aware of that.
Yeah.
Ever to realize that I was consuming some people's bullshit, even in my home before I would have like anyone over and, let's just be around people. And once you start working on yourself and reflecting, okay, this is where some of my anxiety stem from, or oh my gosh, I'm around this person. I feel so, like you explained, Jennifer, I feel so heavy. Like I'm not feeling comfortable. My heart is racing. What does that mean? Being curious. Why? And exercise some of the tools that you can to kind of discover that. So you know what to do. I've literally saged the shit out of my house.
Yeah.
The minute people come in and leave my home, I've done that. Like, take with you whatever you had.
Yeah.
Because it did not serve us.
Exactly. And as women, we're trained to take it.
Yeah.
We've been trained for centuries to be energetic sponges and just take it all in. Right. So as ladies, our generation especially, because I guess we're the first kind of quote unquote, I don't know, I'm not going to even say woke because I don't know if that's PC anymore, but we're really aware of energy, right? We're really aware of energy, and we're really owning that we don't have to take that on. That's not our job. Sure, if you're a therapist or a doctor, you are going to take some on, but you don't have to take it on as in like sacrifice yourself so that the other person feels better, right?
Yes.
In the end, that doesn't serve anybody, because if you just give and give and give and you burn out, then who are you going to be able to help, at some point? Right?
It's like I tell my clients too, because once you start doing the work and really taking care of yourself, you really start feeling the energy of others. And I describe it as, it's like you're wearing a new pair of glasses and you're seeing things that you've never seen before. It's a new prescription. And so that is the reason why your boundaries, they are your shield.
Yeah, they are. Or sometimes you just want to take off your glasses.
Yes. Yes.
You're like, if you can't see anything, ignorance is bliss, right?
I don't want to hear it.
Yeah. That's why some people, they really don't even, they're not sensitive. They really truly don't have that kind of like sensitivity, maybe because of how they were trained in their family, maybe because of their zodiac sign, their personality, whatever. They're just like oblivious because they have natural boundaries. Right? But they also have natural kind of,
also when you have experienced, especially childhood trauma, especially physical and emotional trauma, you are very alert of your surrounding, because you're constantly checking to make sure that your surrounding is safe.
Yeah, exactly. That's what you're tuning into, right? And if you're so well trained from childhood to tune into all of that and be on high alert all the time, that is opening yourself up to receiving that kind of energy too. So my teacher explained it as kind of like you're on the same radio wavelength. When you've had a lot of trauma and you've like kind of lived your life that whole way, in that high anxiety, high alert mode, then you are also able to tune into everyone else's similar modes and pick up on it. And he says you have to learn to change the radio station. And that's using all the tools, that we learn in therapy and, sometimes with me and spiritual counselors and stuff, to really kind of, again, figure out what you need to do in order to change that channel. Right? I mean, that's what I spent, however many years in therapy learning to do. Just for myself. And then the great side effect is that you can notice people's energy. You can read them pretty well, but you don't have to really soak it in. So So
we can be like, okay, I'm going to be with these group of people, and, how can I like prepare myself before I go there so that I can be, the best that I can be, and not just, soak in all of this thing. And then afterwards, what am I going to do to like release? And I don't take, anything with me either.
Yeah, it's a deliberate decision, right? So, I always tell people, once you learn these tools, if you choose not to use them, that's interesting too, right? First of all, you have to practice things to become a habit. You don't just automatically learn how to play the piano, or you don't just automatically learn how to, cook gourmet meals. That takes practice. So practicing these tools, I mean, is a huge part of being able to do exactly what you're talking about, Maggie, because a lot of times when we're kind of rushing or we're not kind of like focused, we forget to do these things because they're not a habit. And then we come home and we're like, oh man, I feel like I just got hit by a garbage truck, right?
All the time. Yeah.
Yeah. So the amazing thing about, being grown-ups and, having and being interested and learning the things that we've all learned is that it is going to really help us, really stay in a place of, taking care of ourselves and maintaining, a quality of sort of energy and feeling and emotion that, keeps us in a good place.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have to take it all on.
Absolutely.
We don't have to take it all on anymore. And again, so many people are so conditioned, especially women, to just take it all on that, again, it's such a habit. Even when they're given the tools, they still, kind of slip into those old habits because that's what they learned since they're, little girls. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, preparation is a big deal. I did dialectical behavioral therapy in my 20s, and it was the way he described it it just made so much sense to me to do the preparation. Right. So some people, everyone has a kind of spectrum of how they emotionally respond to things. And if you have trauma or have had trauma in your life, generally speaking, biochemically and emotionally, you really respond much more strongly to triggers and stimuli, more so than other, quote unquote, people with, regular folks or people with less trauma, let's say that. And so anytime you're about to get into a situation or go be with your family for 3 days or go see like 10 clients in one day, you have to acknowledge to yourself that is kind of a situation in which there's the potential to absorb more negative energy than you want to, right? Yeah. So absolutely, Maggie, knowing what you can do to prepare yourself and also just doing it, period, is so important for anybody who does anything in the field of psychotherapy or energy work.
Wonderful.
So, for example, I was taught that, if I'm really tired this week, if I didn't sleep enough, if I'm about to, get my cycle, if I had, several stressful things happen that week, like a test or like something bad at work, right? And then I'm going to go see my parents for 3 days. Well, you better work those tools for days before you go to your parents, because you know for sure that parents are very triggering. You have to really be conscious of preparing yourself. Yeah.
Jennifer, very curious. How did you get curious into becoming an acupuncturist and a doctor for Chinese medicine? Like, how did your family take this? How did this journey begin?
Well, my parents were very against it. Everyone in my family are Western doctors or researchers. So they were like, what the heck? You are nuts. And my parents grew up in an era of Korea where it was post-Korean War. So it was occupied by the U.S. Army and everyone was all about Western medicine. That was the thing that was like, good at the time. And they were taught, folk medicine is bad. Eastern medicine doesn't work. And you need to do things our way, right? As, people who come to conquer and often do. And so my parents, again, they didn't grow up with any of this stuff. They didn't do acupuncture. Maybe they took some herbs like that my grandmother would sneak to them, but, for the most part, they didn't really even learn about it in school because their schools were even very Westernized. So for me, I didn't grow up doing any of this stuff. I didn't even grow up drinking ginger tea, which is like a staple in most Asian households for like nausea and stomach aches and, preventing the, colds, right? I didn't even drink ginger tea. I grew up in a very kind of Western paradigm in terms of medicine. So I was actually pre-med in college because that was sort of the expectation. Yeah, I was interested in biology and health and stuff. I'm also a very creative person. I really love to write. That's one of my, kind of natural gifts. So I did my pre-med courses and then I took a detour and I promised my parents, okay, just let me have a couple years trying to write the great American novel. Let me go to Columbia to get my master's in writing. And then, if I don't make it big, I promise I will go back to medical school. So the great American novel did not happen. And as many people who graduate from those kind of, master's writing programs do, I went into publishing and editorial work, right? Wow. And, corporate jobs, right? Enough said. Yeah. I'm not a 9-to-5 gal. I'm a Pisces and a rooster, so both signs do not like 9-to-5s. We do not like having bosses, especially controlling bosses. So after a few years, I knew it was just not for me, right? I was like, this is not for me anymore. So I was like, okay, well, we could go back to the original plan, go back to medical school, or, do something different. And at the time, I was working at this small literary magazine across from what would be my acupuncture school. One day I went out the door, I saw a flyer for an open house, and I said, that's it. That's what I want to do. And I went to that open house and I submitted my application like the day after. I just knew something, how some things you just know.
You're just like that. Oh my
you just
gosh.
feel it.
You just feel
I'm like, that's me. I want to learn about this. And, worst case scenario, thinking about it rationally. I said, what's the worst that can happen? Do a semester or two and find out it's not for me. I hadn't even had acupuncture at that point, mind you. Isn't that crazy? It was a totally
you
thing.
I
literally did not even have, I didn't even have acupuncture, but I just trusted that feeling.
You felt that.
Yeah. When
like
you're desperate,
calling, right?
yeah, you're desperate. You're really putting your feelers out there. What should I do? What should I do? And then
you were asking
see
universe.
I was. And it answered loud and clear. And I said, you know what? I would be a fool to ignore this, huge message that I'm getting.
I love that.
So I just signed up and I started studying, Chinese medicine. I started experiencing acupuncture and herbs. And it was a game changer for me. I did not even expect how much, of a change in terms of my mental and also physical well-being it would bring about. At the time, I was on like a couple of anxiety medications. I was on a antidepressant medication for lifelong serious depression and PMDD. And I just generally felt like crap, as one usually does after taking those meds for a while, right? Exactly. I also had a really bad experience with birth control. I felt like crap. I had gained a lot of weight. It just made me tired and sluggish. So, at the age of 25, 26, I was just like, I felt like a hot mess. And I wanted answers. I mean, luckily I had some really amazing therapists, including the person who does dialectical behavioral therapy, which is kind of rooted in some Eastern practices, as you know, Yessie. And that was so helpful. But what was missing was understanding how my body could play a role in creating my mental well-being, right? It's not just about your mind. It's not even just about your spirit, but it is about acknowledging that your body is here to help you. It's not your prisoner. It's not something who's working against you. It's actually here to really help you attain whatever the highest level of emotional well-being that you want, right? So that's something that I really started to learn and appreciate when I started studying Chinese medicine. So yeah, that's how I got into it. And it worked amazingly. I got off all my meds. I had actually stopped having my period for a couple years on birth control, and it didn't come back even when I got off of it, which was very strange. I thought that's very weird. We should, probably do something about that. I got acupuncture specifically for that condition, and it came back in a month. I drank some disgusting herbs. I got acupuncture and I got my period back in a month. It had been missing for a couple years. And I said to myself, wow. And here's the other kicker. I had lifelong horrible periods, irregular, bleeding for 8 days, cramps up the wazoo, fall down dead kind of cramps, as in you have to stay in bed for 1 or 2 days. Yeah. Agony, right? And everyone in my family had that too, so I just never questioned it.
You thought it was when
it came back, it was regular, no cramps, barely any PMS, just 3 to 5 days of bleeding. I was like, holy shit. If I could just help women with their periods and their PMDD alone, I would be a great contributor to world peace, I think. So I was sold. Yes, you would.
I need to get
that's the only 2 things I help people with. Wow, what a difference that would make. So I stuck with it.
That's amazing. Wow. It's good. It's good that you mentioned that about the body, because when I was getting my own training into energy and Kansa, and as you know, we've spoken so much of my whole journey. One of the things that I really learned that they really stress is, so we have so many different layers as people, right? We have our body, which is what we can feel and see. And then there's the mental layer and the energetic layer, all of these other layers. And sometimes there's, we can be so disconnected from all of these other layers that when, let's say, our mental body or, emotional body is not well, and we're, ignoring it, it starts to move into our physical body.
Absolutely.
Which is the one thing that we are, the most close to.
Yeah.
And then that's when we start feeling certain pains, or we start feeling, a certain way. And one of the things that I love about like Eastern medicine is that it's about getting to like the root of the, problem. It's not, yes, I love combining the Western and the Eastern, because I do feel that there's a place for both of them, and they're both very important. But the one thing about Eastern medicine is that it's like, why? So why am I getting these migraines every single day? Why can't I sleep? Okay, let's look into all of these different things, because if you get to the root, you're not going to be dealing with, the pain. So I love that you said that, 'cause I think it's so true.
Yeah, no one can come in for acupuncture forever. I mean, great for my business, but I don't want you to. I don't want to see you when you're 80 years old still coming in for migraines. That means that, things didn't change enough in your life, which that's what my real goal and passion is for you. Hopefully it's your goal too. I'll work with whatever you want to do, but you're right. I mean, there is always a very deep root cause, related to so many layers. And if you address all those layers, that's when you have the best chance of truly, truly healing, in all aspects that you want to heal. So for example, migraines. Migraines, my teacher always jokes, he says, somebody is a pain in the head or a pain in the neck, something or somebody. That's the root, right? But then you're like, okay, well, why is somebody or something a pain in the head? You have to look at your life. You have to look at the people around you. How are you dealing with them? What is your perspective on what you're going through with all these people who are giving you a lot of stress, right? And then other factors too, which sometimes, a lot of Western medicine practitioners, not to be down on them because they definitely have their place. I mean, I respect all my sisters and brothers who are all doctors. They don't consider nutrition oftentimes. They don't consider things like, even the weather outside, right? They don't even consider things like how things are interconnected. So one of the main triggers for migraines or headaches is actually digestion. When your digestion is off, either through more obvious things like food poisoning or whatever, or say you're experiencing like an episode of like irritable bowel syndrome, or maybe you just ate something really cold or really hard to digest that didn't agree with your stomach. That can actually be one of the contributing factors to creating a headache or a migraine, because the meridians that stimulate your stomach are also connected to your head. They all go up to your forehead and your eyes, and actually even here. So a classic stomach-related headache is often kind of focused right here, in your forehead, and you're even sometimes spreading to your temple region, right? So I like to say that headaches, again, they have so many layers as to why they happen. That's why people find headaches really difficult to deal with, because they only understand that they can take pain medication and that deals with just one small layer of the issue, right? Actually, headaches or migraines have so many different aspects that you have to understand as a root and deal with, from nutrition to, hey, making sure you don't eat like ice cold food every day, to making sure you are eating foods that, don't give you a lot of like trouble, right? To making sure you get enough sleep, right? Sleep is a big factor in why people get headaches and migraines. To the temperature outside. Are you dressed appropriately for that temperature? If it's really hot, are you dressed appropriately for that? If it's really cold, are you dressed appropriately for that? Are you keeping warm, right? Hormones. Hormones, I mean, on that given day, you can't really do much about your hormones, but on a long-term basis, there's so many things that you can do for your hormones that are related to, stress management, right? Because as you guys know, all of us ladies know, our hormones can be really thrown off by the levels of stress that you have and levels of anxiety that you have. So dealing with all those factors alone, you have to deal with all those layers to really even just treat something that's quote unquote as simple as a headache or migraine. But if it's so simple, then why are so many people still experiencing it? Right? It's because we're not educated to understand. Yeah, we're not educated to understand all the ways in which we can kind of, approach all those root causes and do something for prevention even.
It's so crazy.
So I used to get chronic headaches.
Just like you, I would get headaches, and I would personally say to myself, like, before it would just be like, oh, let me grab an ibuprofen instantly. That would be like my first reaction. And of course, now that I'm aware, it's like, when was the last time I drank a glass of water? When was the last time, am I breathing? Like actually intentional breathing, through those breaths. So it's sometimes literally that simple. and how to, just be a little more intuitive with yourself and your body. Your temple.
Yeah. Exactly.
Absolutely.
And when you deal with the root, then you can really have a good chance of really fixing the problem in a way that you're happy with, not just kind of putting a Band-Aid or sticking an Advil on it every time, and it being recurring and chronic. So, and that's one of the main tenets of Chinese medicine or Eastern medicine is prevention. What's the saying? It's an old saying. I don't even know where it even comes from. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Things are so much easier and take less energy and money to deal with when it's the stage of prevention, right? But when it actually is like progressed to a chronic disease state, it's so much more time consuming and more difficult to really unpack everything that's kind of, created that, a disease condition. So we're all about really trying to teach things that prevent more serious things from coming on. And one of those things is really understanding, again, yourself, your psychology. What makes you happy? Are you doing things that make you fulfilled? Are you really aligned with who you are? Because your body's physical symptoms and even emotional symptoms, in my Taoist lineage, we really understand them as this. All disease is just a way of letting you know that you're not aligned with your true self. You're not following what you're really supposed to, you're supposed to do in this lifetime, right? And you're not following a path where you are feeling satisfied and happy. And if your spirit is like detecting all these things, he talks to your body and says, okay, body, well, she's kind of ignoring me. So let's get a little back pain going on here, or let's get a headache every other day, just to kind of like, knock on the door a little bit and say, make that person consider.
You, right?
Yeah, the pain. Yeah, you guys know, you guys are tough. You can take a lot of emotional pain, right? But boy, when it comes to physical pain, you will cry uncle a lot faster. So your body is really here to kind of give you those signs, and they will get bigger and bigger and louder and more obnoxious if you keep ignoring them, to really be true to yourself, to really learn and embrace that it's your God-given right to be happy, right? What does the Constitution say? The liberty, every man and woman are entitled to the pursuit of life, liberty, happiness.
Yes.
That is what Chinese medicine is all about.
Yes.
How do you be free? How can you be happy? And, how can you have a good life, a good quality life?
Yes.
Your body will definitely let you know if you're not on the right track for that. Because your spirit and your body want you so bad to have all the things that you want in this lifetime and accomplish all the things that you're excited to accomplish.
Yes.
So when you really get off that path, which we kind of call the Tao, your personal Tao, your body will let you know. So, in Western society, we're often taught to really fear your body and fear physical symptoms and be afraid if you're getting this condition or this condition, especially if it's more serious like cancer or heart attacks or disease, right? But actually, I think all of you can really speak to this. Once you really figure out the real root, which is psychological, emotional, 99% of the time, then you actually don't have to be afraid of that anymore. And you don't have to worry that it's going to haunt you and become worse or kill you or affect your quality of life, because you found the root. You found the real root. And once you listen and you take action to really make those changes that your body and your spirit are pushing you to make, those symptoms will go away. They will go away. So my patients who make the most progress in terms of the physical goals that they come in with, or, resolving any kind of physical conditions or diseases that they come in with, are the ones who do the therapy, are the ones who read the self-help books, are the ones who sit with me for 2 hours sometimes talking about this stuff and going home and really thinking, sometimes 3 or 4 hours.
Raising my hand.
And always a pleasure. And really contemplating this, really understanding that actually physical disease and symptoms are just a manifestation of your spirit letting you know, hey, remember what you're here for. You have to remember what you're really here for. And what you're here for is not just a lifetime of suffering and pain and paying bills and, all that stuff. But what you're here for is to really, hey, have a good life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm so excited that you are talking about your clients and really defining and making the connection of your physical health with your spirit and mental health, right? Because I wanted to share with our listeners how my experience has been working with you and how it all started.
Oh man, you have such a great story. And it's an inspiring story. So in Chinese medicine and Taoism, we say everything happens for a reason.
Yes.
And if you dig down deep enough, everything has a good purpose. And
Absolutely.
What you went through, holy shit, it is and has been and will change the lives of thousands of clients that you work with. So yeah, go ahead and tell. I mean, I love your story. I tell it to everybody. Yours too, Maggie.
About maybe 7 years ago, that was during the time there was a lot happening in my life. So I'm going to try to make this long story short as possible, but I struggled with anxiety for all my life since I was 4 years old. And I was
there with you.
Yes, I was called La Niña Nerviosa. Tú sí eres nerviosa. Date tranquila. Calma esos nervios.
Yeah.
And that was it. I used to define myself as a nervous person. I never knew anything about anxiety or anything like that. I started learning about anxiety when I was in my late 20s. And then I was in a job that I hated so much. I hated that job so much. I used to cry every time I used to have to go to that job, which made my anxiety worse. And then I decided I don't want to do this anymore. I'm going to go back to school and I'm going to become a therapist. And at that time, I had 2 little boys and a husband.
God bless.
Yes. And I was going to school full time. And therefore, there was the stresses of school, mother, wife, finances. And if you were to ask me, how did you do it? I would tell you, I have no idea because I literally became numb. That's how I survived. Numb and just be on the go. And guess what? As soon as I graduated with my master's, my body knew that it was over and I started getting really sick. I collapsed. Literally, I would collapse in gatherings. Literally, I would collapse in my home and no one could figure out what was wrong with me. They knew I had an irregular heartbeat. I tried, and I'm not lying, I tried 10 different medications. 10. While they were trying to figure out what was happening to me. Every medication didn't do anything, but just added really bad side effects. To the point where one of them even got me very depressed. So now I'm dealing with depression. I'm dealing with anxiety, and I'm dealing with a heartbeat that would, just by me laughing, will go from 60 to almost 200, where I would just pass out. And I didn't know what to do. Now I'm here afraid because I was running into the emergency room, and I was afraid that I was no longer going to be alive for my boys. That was my biggest fear. My boys. I'm not going to see them grow up. I'm not going to see them get married. I'm getting emotional. I was just so afraid. My husband would wake up in the middle of the night to check my heartbeat to see if I was still alive. And I remember being in therapy and crying hysterical because no one can give me an answer. I was trying all these medications. I even did surgery and nothing worked. Surgery lasted only for 3 days.
Wow.
And my therapist was like, she's so into holistic work. So she was like, "What? You have to try holistic medicine. You have to try something different. What are you going to lose? Like, go ahead and give it a try. Try acupuncture. She just gave me so many things for me to try. And I remember ending session and I was like, this is my only choice. Like, I have to do something different. I've done everything. I've tried all medications. I did surgery. No one can tell me how to heal and what is wrong with me. So I went online and I started looking and learning about acupuncture. And Jennifer comes up. Jennifer comes up. And that was when Jennifer had her Inwood office, the tiny little
little windowless office. That was very dusty.
And I go in there and our session lasts, I think, like 4 hours, right? I'm crying. I don't know what to do. I'm telling Jennifer everything I'm going through. I'm collapsing. I don't know if I'm going to live. I'm worried about my heart. You know, it's working so hard. What does that mean? So that when I'm 60 or 70, am I going to have a heart that is like 100 years old and I'm just going to die? It was just, I had so much worry.
Yeah.
And do you remember?
I remember seeing your face. You look so afraid.
So afraid. And I remember telling my cardiologist that I was starting to see Jennifer, and he goes, whatever makes you happy. If you want to do that, go ahead. And so I did. And I remember our first session. I left that office feeling so hopeful, but not only emotionally feeling great, physically, I felt like my body changed completely. It was different. I came home and my husband was like, you're glowing. You're glowing. Like, you look so happy. How can that be happen in just one session? And I'm like, I'm going to Jennifer every Saturday moving forward.
She even stuck with me even though I was late all the time.
We met every week, which I am so honored, because not only every Saturday we would meet and talk and do the acupuncture and also try the different herbs and all of that, but we built a friendship. We really did.
Yeah.
And I'm not kidding you. It took about 6 months to a year to the point where I no longer take any medication. My heart rate is amazing. I do deadlifts. I work out. My heart never given me an issue. I remember going to my cardiologist and he's looking and doing all the tests and everything. And he's like, whatever you're doing, keep doing.
And Jessie, you forgot to say, you can laugh as much as you want.
I can laugh as much as I want. Yes.
Yeah.
And you guys know how loud I laugh.
Your laugh.
Wow.
And I couldn't even do that.
Imagine going through life being afraid to laugh. I mean, that says it all, right? I mean,
yes.
Yeah.
And I remember when I went and he's like, you're fine. You don't need to come. Cause I used to see him every 2 weeks, because that's how bad the condition was. He's like, you can come every 6 months. His nurse started crying because she said to me, I've been through the journey with you. And I remember when you walked into this office, you were so scared.
Yeah.
You really thought it was the end. And seeing you now, and she was like, I see you. You're so happy. You're glowing. Your heart is so healthy. So healthy. And of course, like, Jennifer helped me really look into, it's just not a heart condition. It is so much more, girl, that you need to change in your life.
Yeah.
Your eating, your mental health, your spiritual health, everything. Like, we explore all the things that I needed to change in my life. And when I did that, this is the reason why I live life. I try to live my life the fullest that I can, because I honestly believe that this was my second chance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it made you an even more incredible therapist, I think.
Yeah.
Because not only, I think you agree with this, but like, when you come from a place of like feeling really good about your life and feeling like you're, as healthy as you can be, and, doing all the things that you want to do, you share that energy automatically with your clients, whether or not you convey it verbally or not. They feel it and they get uplifted by it.
Yes.
But also, again, the compassion that you developed through living that, horror story and coming out the other side, understanding what it took to really heal that condition. So many people get so scared by these kind of physical conditions. It really wrecks them in terms of their mental well-being. And again, what a great, valuable thing. I know as a therapist, you can't share your personal story, but you bring that energy, you bring that wisdom and confidence to your sessions so that your clients believe you when you say you can get through this. You can approach it through all aspects and layers and come out the other side, being well. And they feel that confidence from you, that 100% confidence that comes from living it. Right.
Yes.
And then what a great story to share with your, family and friends and people who aren't your clients.
Right. Right.
It's so inspiring because you were really in a bad place.
I
you
was
were really in a bad place physically and also mentally. I remember.
Yes. Do you remember what was the connection? Like, what was my heart trying to say to me?
Yeah. So in Chinese medicine, again, every organ has an emotional kind of job, right? Or several emotional jobs, psychological jobs. And for the heart, it's always related to joy and happiness, right? And also peacefulness. The heart is also sort of king of the body. I don't really like that term, queen. Let's say queen, queen of the body. And the queen always knows and always keeps, vigilant as to what your true purpose is here in life. It will always keep reminding you. So the heart also represents your true passion, your true purpose that you're meant for in this lifetime. So anytime you have anything wrong with your heart or anything going on with your heart, that means that something is related to love, self-love, love relationships, right? Love for others, love in your family, right? Happiness, your own happiness. Are you doing things that really make you joyful and happy, right? And also, again, being true to your purpose. So boy, we talked for hours about that. I remember. And, we figured out that the situation, if I may share, your job situation wasn't ideal. You felt like you were doing a lot of good work, but there were a lot of things there that were just too much, right? And so we were like, dude, we got to get you out of there into a job that you really, really, really can go to and feel peaceful about it and just feel like you're thriving and you're appreciated. And you feel excited to go to every day, right? I think there were a lot of things about continuing your trauma work that you realized you needed to do, inner child work. Boy, I remember you really, yes. We talked a lot about the mother wound because we have this in common. And, I remember you really tackling that. You were doing some intense work and then also doing your own training, which I'm sure helped you too, to kind of help others who are going through, similar issues. So, I just remember being so inspired by and so proud of you for, again, really trying to dig down deep and understand emotionally, psychologically, what your heart was trying to tell you. And you went after it. You're like, I gotta fix this, dude.
It wouldn't happen without you, Jennifer.
Oh, well.
It was, it wouldn't. Like, I was at a place where I thought that I didn't know if tomorrow was promising. And I think that it's just the universe, right? Like, I started being curious about acupuncture. I Google it and you come up.
It's amazing, right?
Yes.
There are no accidents.
You come up. And here we are today, right? Thank you so much. I tell you all the time, like, I am here. I really believe that I am here because of all the support that you gave me. I honestly, like, I had a really great cardiologist, but he himself didn't know what to do. Like, when that surgery happened and it was good for 3 days and then my heart rate was up again, he was like, let's do surgery again. And I'm like,
no, you just did it.
No, I can't do that. Cause he's like, you can't, like, we try all the medication. Nothing works for you. So we can just go back and do surgery. And I was like, I can't do this. And so I'm so blessed and grateful for you.
Well, I think it's always a two-way street, as a therapist, if your client just comes in there and sits there every week and listens to you and doesn't go home and do their homework, they get a little bit better, but they don't go all the way, right? Yeah. So I have to really credit you for being exceptionally, exceptionally good at going home and doing your homework, implementing your tools, learning as much as you could about what was really going on with you, and then making the changes that you needed to little by little to get to where you knew that your heart wanted you to be. Your heart wanted you to be there, right? So, I would love to take all the credit. I'm glad I don't. But you really deserve a lot of credit too. And this is the beautiful thing about acupuncture, Chinese medicine. It's about empowerment. right? It's about empowering yourself to understand that you have all the gifts that you need inside and in your hands to get better from anything, whether it's mental, physical, emotional, whatever, right? You have responsibility, but you also have the power to, play a huge part in your own healing, whatever it is from. And it's not just showing up and expecting the doctor to do all the magic, right? As we kind of do in Western medicine oftentimes. But even in Western medicine, they're like, well, if you have a heart attack, yeah, we'll patch you up, but you got to go home and lose weight and exercise and eat better. I mean, just even basic stuff like that, right?
Right.
So, I mean, I have to give you so much credit for, just being such an awesome patient, but also really having faith in the process and listening to yourself. Listening to yourself as to what you knew you really needed to do. I give you so much credit for that because we are given so many messages in this culture and society to go against what our heart tells us to do, right? And that's why a lot of people, that's why heart disease is the number one killer in Western society. We are all taught to go against what we truly deep down want to do in our heart. And also, so many people are just really negligent, or not negligent, but they're not taught to give enough weight and weight to taking care of yourself with self-love. It's not just about loving other people, right? The heart is about loving yourself, honoring yourself.
That was my lesson.
Yeah.
That's the lesson I needed to learn.
Yeah. And I remember we had many hours of talking about that. How, as fellow Pisces, I know, and rabbits, we're so good at taking care of other people. We're so good at loving other people and making sure they thrive and they are getting all the things that they want. But what about us? Right?
Yes.
We often leave ourselves high and dry, and that is when, stuff starts to happen health-wise, to really remind yourself, hey, we're not just here for other people. We're here for ourselves. And it's our responsibility to give ourselves that love that maybe we didn't really get when we were little. Of course, our parents loved us, but, maybe we didn't feel that connection because of the trauma going on too, or the way in which it was conveyed. Or like for me, I grew up in, in a very different culture than my parents grew up. So there was a big disconnect. I was telling a patient about this other day, how Asian love language in Asian culture, love language is about criticism, telling you you're not good enough, you got to do this better. And if you grow up in Asia or Korea, where my family's from, they know your kid feels loved if your parents do that to you, because that's the love language that you're taught, right?
Wow.
Of course, not to the degree of like they're
Dominican love language.
Yeah, exactly. Not to the point where they're like smacking you around, but you guys know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
People really in the culture is about you. If you love your kid, you push them to do better. If you love your kid, you don't praise them too much because then they get lazy and they won't meet their potential, right? Whereas, but I grew up here where it's totally different love language, right? If you love your kids, you praise them. If you love your kids, you encourage them. You tell them, I love you every day. You hug them. I didn't get that from my parents. So I grew up very confused as to like, I didn't feel loved by my parents. Of course they did love me, but I didn't interpret their love language as love. So, fast forward to as an adult, I really had to learn to give myself the love that I was conditioned to want, right? I had to tell myself, I love you. I had to tend to my inner child. I had to hold myself and hug myself. I had to make myself that awesome cup of tea or that great dinner or take myself out to the movies or whatever it was that I needed to feel loved, right? And as grown-ups, we have that power, right?
We do.
So loving yourself is just such a big part of mental health and well-being, especially when it comes to your heart.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because we don't, especially if you grow up in a kind of more, different family with a different love language than the culture that you're used to, there is that kind of disconnect, that in a void that you have to at some point learn how to fill by yourself. Your parents aren't going to do it because their love language will pretty much stay the same the rest of your life. But you have to learn to do it for yourself. And I think I really saw you. I really saw you really understanding this at a very deep level. And really, again, you really went after it. You really took it so seriously. I mean, this is what you teach your clients. And you're like, well, I better start really applying it to myself at a really high level, right?
Yeah.
So as a therapist,
I think,
or even as a Chinese medicine doctor,
a lot of people look at me like I have two hats when I say, and this is going to sound a little crazy, and maybe some listeners will think I'm crazy, but
what's crazy, really, right?
That
crazy is such a blanket term for crazy is such a blanket term for so many things, right?
That whole experience was a blessing in disguise.
Absolutely.
It really was.
That makes sense. Yeah. Absolutely.
It really, like, I strongly believe that if I didn't go through that, I would not be where I'm at now, emotionally, mentally, physically, financially, in every aspect of my life. Even
You're
my mother.
in a completely different place.
Yeah.
You're a completely different place with your relationships, right? All your relationships.
Yeah.
You know, we don't have to go into that, but I mean, I know, you know, from, you know, what our conversations, you're a completely different place with your career. You're so satisfied with what you're doing now and how you're going about it. And just with your relationship with yourself. I mean, I look at you're like the picture of health. You're glowing. I mean, you look 10 years younger than when you first started come see me. And that was 7, 8 years ago.
Thank you.
That's saying a lot. I mean, that's saying a lot, right?
Yes. Yes.
That is really saying a lot.
Absolutely.
So that the blessing in disguise, this is what I would hope that, you know, people who are, use Chinese medicine and the concept of, like, you know, Eastern philosophy, realize is that, yes, our diseases, our physical conditions are all blessings in disguise. Yeah. If you just know how to look at it and really be honest with yourself, what is the blessing here? What is going to really happen for me in terms of positive change if I really look at the root of the condition or disease that I have, right? Yeah. And I'm all disease. I think this is going to be my new motto. All diseases are blessings in disguise.
Yeah, because it's like, you know, it's conversation with you from your body. It's letting you know. Yeah. It's an awareness.
And maybe Jessie wouldn't have made the change that she has made.
She did all these different
unless
things
that had happened to her.
Yeah.
And that's why her body chose that method, because it was really trying to let her know specifically.
Literally, it stopped working after graduation. Like, it was like, okay, girl, do your thing.
It was
graduate.
Like it was on autopilot, literally. Like, let me make it.
It was like, graduate, do what you, go ahead, do what you got to do. Oh, I think it was like maybe like 2 weeks after graduation.
Yeah.
It got
amazing.
Sick.
Yeah. And that kind of just tells you, like, what the body is capable of. Once you get into the fight or flight mode, your adrenaline is like pumping through your veins constantly. Your cortisol levels are up the wazoo.
I gotta get through this. I gotta do
that
this.
keeps you going. Yeah. And that is the purpose of those biochemicals, to keep you going when an army is coming after you, when like someone's coming to kill you, when a tiger is running after you. No matter if you have a stomach ache, you're pregnant, or you're not feeling well, that adrenaline will keep you going and numb you to anything that will get in your way of, like, escape and going forward. So that's the kind of, like, mode that you were in when you were in school. And honestly, with all that was on your plate, I mean, that was the only way you could get through school. And then the minute the adrenaline went down, the cortisol levels went down, which, yes, it takes usually about 2 to 3 weeks after that kind of intense trauma to start going down. Then your body is like, okay, now we're falling apart.
That's 100% true, because I tell people, when I had my C-section, everybody knows, like, C-sections are terrible. Yeah. The recovery is terrible. Yeah. The pain is terrible. The way that I had my C-section, I feel like the moment that I got admitted into that hospital and they were like, all right, nothing is working. Your blood pressure is just not coming down. If we can induce you, because we can't mix the medication to induce you with, like, the medication to, you know, keep your blood pressure normal. I was swollen like a blueberry.
I remember.
I had my C-section. I cannot, like, I remember, like, discomfort, like, when I would wake up or when I would, you know, move or sit down, but I was on autopilot. I remember, like, Will had just started working for the, you know, for his new job. So he could only take, like, a week off. And that week I was in the hospital. So I had to learn how to put my clothes on by myself, tie my shoes by myself, bend over. I was in the hospital with Mateo 8 to 10 hours a day. And it was like, I didn't feel, and I remember the nurses being like, so you know, do you need, like, some painkillers? I'm like, I am not in pain. And they're like, I'm like, I'm not, and it's just because I wasn't in my body. Yeah. I was like, my kid needs me. This is what I'm doing. And the way that the body is, like, the body knows, like, okay, we need to go into like this mode that is just like, survivor mode, mode.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna, I'm gonna do everything that I can to like keep you there. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just incredible. But as a mom, you had to do it. And I really believe that when you give birth to a child, something extra kicks in that makes you extra able to tap into that kind of like survivor mode, because you're not just surviving for yourself now.
No.
Your ability to survive and also take care of this tiny little being who's your new child, it depends on it, right? It depends on it. So mothers especially, are really good at doing that. And then, but what happens when you start to carry it into your normal life, right? Your everyday life for years.
Oh,
at some point, things start to really fall apart. Yeah. Things really start to fall apart when that's like a chronic, state at which you live. So, I mean, it's incredible. I mean, it's incredible what the body is capable of. But, Maggie, you're like, I'm not even in pain. I mean, that is the purpose of those biochemicals and adrenaline and cortisol, to kind of, again, keep you able to keep going, right? Keep you able to, face the danger or run away from the tigers, or, people who are wounded, for example, like in wars. That's how they keep going. That's how they get out alive, right? Because